if you look at the educational system, it's doing about 30 to 40 to 50% better with females than males. So college enrollments are overwhelmingly more female than male. And the question is, why is that? There is some feeling that the introduction of a kind of women's studies cast of characters has tended to make males feel somewhat out of sorts or not fully wanted. And in my Decline of Males book, I described males as having been born with a male original sin. That is, if you're born a guy, you have to work it off. You have to express your feelings. You have to do all those things that will be au courant with the current sexual fashions, which can't be machismo-ish, can't be too draconianly male, can't watch football as much. You have to articulate a different path. Now, that's relatively trivial, and I'm not trying to make a point about it. But the fact is that in the school system, we see boys don't work well and overall, and there's a political question. If a taxpayer-funded entity is producing a better result for one part of the population than the other, A, that's not fair, and B, it constitutes a social problem. So, for example, I discovered that, this was after I wrote The Decline of Males, that 4 out of 5 kids expelled from kindergarten are boys. Now, my first question is, how the hell do you get expelled from kindergarten? But the second is, why this differentiation? And then we see, for example, in the use of drugs to drug kids, that 90% of the victims of Ritalin are boys. And I know a case at the moment of a woman who's got a child that speaks 3 languages, is in a school where most of the kids speak 1. And the child is very bouncy and very active and very energetic. And the mother was told that perhaps the child could be brought to a medical practitioner for an evaluation. That word was used. And you can be certain that they're thinking, let's drug the kid. Let's calm him down with Ritalin or some other substance. And that's very serious because we don't know what the long-term impact of those powerful drugs might be on a small organism. So the issue of what happens to males, I think, is now resurfacing in an interesting way. And I think it offers us the opportunity to begin to review the matter, to begin with the basic biology, to begin with the notion of humans as primates, and to assume that male primates and female primates will act differently, in many cases the same, but also in many cases differently. And we should understand that better and with warmth and not hostility. And so the male original sin problem, I think, has to be avoided because the results are poor. 50 years of women's studies, for example, and I'm not singling out women's studies, I think it's a general issue, 50 years of that since the first program was established in 1970, has yielded a system which is very biased, it appears, functionally, against males. And after all, who wants that? When my book, The Decline of Males, came out, the warmest response I had was from the mothers of boys who wrote and called and whatever to say, you have no idea what goes on in the schools. My son has his hand up all the time. Nobody recognizes him because they're supposed to favor girls. Well, that may be an exaggeration, but that was the response I had, and I thought that was very interesting. I'm not sure that they're feminizing. I think they have impacts, and we don't know for sure what those impacts are. We know some impact. The kid is quieter, maybe learns more, learns better. On the other hand, we have very good reason historically to be very suspicious of drugs that cause behavioral changes because the changes they cause are never the ones that are explicitly indicated on the package. And so one wants to be very, very careful. And I would, if I were a medical practitioner, which I'm not, and I don't have any expertise in the matter, I would be very, very hesitant to drug a kid who's 3. because we have no idea what the long-term implications might be on that child's development, a boy or girl. But since most of the victims of these drugs are boys, we have to assume that essentially they're being feminized in the sense that their behavior is supposed to become more female-like. Oh, sure. I've been told by parents that their children under these drugs are much better off in school. However, I was talking with a French uh, doctor who teaches at the University of Paris Medical School, and he said that, now this was 4 or 5 years ago, that in all of France, there are 4,600 people, kids, taking Ritalin. That is probably as many as there are in a high school in a local suburb. They regard this drug as a highly suspicious drug, very, very powerful, and it's on the restricted list along with cocaine, heroin, and all of that. So nobody can get it. In this country, school nurses just hand it out. And so I think we have sold ourselves a very shabby bill of goods, which may cost us a lot of human competence in years to come.